Welcome to the Mr. Universe Meets podcast in association with the Mansformation Programme. Now, the Mansformation Programme is a 12-week programme for men that want to level up their training, nutrition, lifestyle and mindset so that they can live in a body that looks great, feels great and has unstoppable energy. On this podcast, we're going to be speaking to athletes that have reached the top of their game to understand their mindset, habits and routines and what makes them elite. I want you to take advantage of the lessons they teach and go and smash your own goals. I would love it if you guys would like, share and subscribe and enjoy the podcast. All right, so today I am joined by Bill Kazmaier. He's a 3 times World's Strongest Man winner, 2-time powerlifting world champion. He's the strongest man that ever lived. And to be fair, I could go on forever because Bill just very kindly gifted me this with a list of his achievements on. We could be here all day speaking about that, Bill. So thank you so much for coming on and joining us on the podcast.
Stuart, thank you for inviting me and for what you're doing for sport in general. Not only trying to get a lot of big name faces on the camera for your followers, but then to also help them on their day-to-day basis, maybe their lifestyle and everything that's going on in their lives and their training specifically. So yeah, thanks for having me and thank you.
Well, you know, big names don't come much bigger than yourself. I think like you can throw the word legend around very easily these days, but when you're in the conversation for being the greatest of all time and you're in every conversation, you know, that legend tag is very, very well deserved. So like you say, I'm over the moon that you've agreed to come on and chat about this. And I kind of want to just start us at the beginning of your journey, because obviously we've got a lot of stuff to cover. You've achieved a hell of a lot of stuff over the years. But kind of take us back to the early days, how you got started, how you got interested in weights. You're obviously a great athlete at school, but if you can kind of take us back to that start and start from there, buddy.
Sure, gosh, how far back do you go? As a kid playing in a gravel pit, running up and down the gravel, throwing big rocks from the bottom up to the top, and then using those like grenades to bomb the cars that were 75 years old in the bottom of the gravel pit, running through fields for what seemed to be hundreds and hundreds of yards with the wind blowing through my hair and just being a free spirit like a wild horse, climbing trees, swimming, thinking nothing of running over hill and dale and through the swamp and across the pasture and jumping the fence like a wild animal. I think the first athlete that ever really impressed me was a great Carlisle Native American called Jim Thorpe. Now, he was a guy back at the turn of the century. Gosh, in the Olympic Games, he won the pentathlon, the decathlon, and whoever it was at the Olympics called him the greatest athlete of the 19th century. He played professional baseball, professional football, and being a decathlete, I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be good at everything. And as I grew up, I, of course, played football and wrestled and ran track. So I kind of knew that I was going to be fast and strong when I was 10 years old because we had a track meet and we ran the 50, the 100, and the 400. And I won the 400 by about 50 or 60 yards. I took second to 2 guys that were 2 years older than me, second and third. They had failed twice. So they were 13 and I was 10. And they beat me in the 50. But in the 100, I had another gear and was able to beat them there. A couple days later, I snuck in the gym and I heard this clanging. It was a teacher called Mr. Nas. And there were 5 groups in our 5th grade. And I didn't have him in my group as far as a teacher. But to talk about this guy, well, he was clanging those weights one night. I snuck in the school and banged on the door in the gym. It was the girls' locker room, so I really wanted to get in there and sniff around, if you know what I mean. And just think of this guy. He let me in and said, "Okay, Bill, you've got to be quiet." And there I am. This is me all day with ADD and just kind of crazy mental problems, possibly. He said, "Come in, you can watch me," and then that's it. And think of this guy. We played softball on Friday nights. He did. And think of a guy that looks like a shredded frog. He's 23, 4 years old, muscles everywhere. And softball, when he hit the ball at night, it was as if I stood in the outfield. I thought the bat was going to be shattered when he hit it. Whack! And then as I looked up in the air to see the ball go out over the fence for a home run, it seemed to almost tear the fabric of the universe and went like it was going to go on forever in the night sky. The guy was amazing. Now, he knew that I was from a broken family, that I had a hard time reading and writing. So I thought if I snuck in the gym and watched him, he might teach me how to lift weights. Well, you know, my family was a little bit rough growing up, and I knew what an angry man was like. This man did 150-pound military press for his warm-up. Then he went 175. He weighed 195, and I think he said he was going to try to do his weight that day. So he went 185 and then 190 and missed 195. Well, he slammed the weight down and started to tear the weights off the bar and put them back under the locker. And obviously the workout was over. It wasn't much, but I said to him, "Can I try my weight?" He said, "All right, Bill, what do you weigh?" I said, "I weigh 50 kilos, 110, 10 years old, no instruction. I take the bar to my shoulders, press it over my head, and set it back down on the ground and on the floor." I thought, well, I wonder what he's going to say. What do you think he might say? Pat on the back, "Nice job, Bill. You did a hell of a power clean. Let me show you break down the movement for you and help you excel." The words that came out of his mouth ring till this day. As I travel around the country and speak to students and kids in YMCAs and do a lot of public speaking, those words just keep ringing. You think they might be motivational, inspirational, and something that will carry me through life. Well, they in fact did. Because those words were a lot like the words that came out of my dad's mouth, which were, "Bill, you're horse shit today, you'll be horse shit tomorrow, and you'll always be horse shit." So that's what I was going to try to overcome and get a mentor type to teach me weightlifting. The words that came out of his mouth were, "Now you have to leave, Bill, and don't come back." Now that 50 kilos, like a pillow, could have done it 5 times. Would have loved to know upright rows, maybe a little bit of trap work and deltoid work in one exercise. Would have loved to know isolating tricep, maybe learning how to squat or even deadlift. No, just leave and don't come back. So the fastest kid in school, 5th grade, strongest kid in school, the biggest kid in school. And then I went on to play football and wrestle and run track. In high school, I set the school record in the 100 and in the shot put. I was the biggest guy on the football team. There's a lot to talk about. Do you want to get another question? Or you want
No, that's cool. I mean, obviously, when your teacher just kind of told you to get out, did that make you want to do it more and kind of prove to him that you could do this, or did it kind of just put you off?
It really just, like everything else at that age, 1963, was traumatic. I just moved away from my dad and escaped the hell that I lived in, where beatings were regular, and I can tell you what a brick feels like. He was a mason. And running down the driveway, as I was telling him to fuck off, I'd feel a brick hit me in the middle of the back. He could hero one pretty good. He was 59 years old when I was born. And at 69, he could still throw a pitchfork, a shovel. And if he caught me, I got an ass whipping. And it happened when I was a little kid all the way till the time I escaped. So being traumatized like that, and then being in a confinement of school where the education was either above me, below me, or I didn't care, sports started to become a bit of an escape and something for me to do. I talk about it when I'm speaking to children. It was like an island in a rough sea or an oasis in a dry desert. It was, sport was that place for me to go. In wrestling, I didn't want to wrestle the guys my size. I weighed 222 as a running back in the football team. Our biggest lineman was 190 pounds. I cut to 185 and lost 37 pounds so I could wrestle the smaller guys. I pinned everybody. And it really stunted my growth. If I wouldn't have lost that weight as a junior and senior, I possibly would have went off to college at 250 more and maybe made it in the NFL. But in college football, things really didn't work out. At high school, I was all-state, the best the school had ever seen. And college, I kind of got behind the eight ball because of my grades, so I wasn't allowed to play my first year. And then the second year, some crazy stories. They put a freshman ahead of me as I came back to play, and I was just disgusted with the whole thing. They said, "Bill, why don't you try Catholicism?" And I said, "Nah." So I dropped out of college and snuck into the YMCA and started lifting weights.
So what position were you playing back then? Because obviously, like you said, the biggest, the strongest, the fastest. What you would strike me as being, like you say, in that defensive line. But was that where you were put all the time, or?
Okay, as I just started as a freshman, about 14 years old, we had 5 games, and I was a nose guard, and we won all 5, a lineman. But the last game of the season, this young fellow went running by me, and I took the football out of his hands and ran 75 yards the other way. No one could catch me. So my second year, sophomore, coach said, "Bill, line up here behind the quarterback. And if we call a 3-play, 32-hole, 4-hole, 6-hole, you get the ball." And as a sophomore, we went 10-0. I was the fullback, and it was pretty ugly. You see, a guy taught me how to work when I was a young man. He was a tree trimmer, telephone linesman during the day, and tree trimmer on weekends and in the evenings. And he was probably my first strength coach. This guy, again, looked like a squirrel. He could climb a tree and top it, and sometimes by the lake, I'd have to drag these branches 20, 30, 40 yards at a time. And he told me, "You don't walk back, you run back from the truck. And don't take one branch in each hand, take 3, 4, 5. I'll cut them for the right size, you stack them up." Well, here I am training after school for 2 or 3 hours with this tree trimmer. And one weekend, on a Saturday morning, we showed up on a job to cut down 2 trees. They were maybe more than half a meter across, maybe 10, 12 meters tall, pretty full trees. We showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning. We cut down those 2 trees in one day. And oftentimes I'll ask young people, "Well, what time do you think we got out of there?" 8 in the morning, maybe 12 hours, 8 at night? They go, "Oh, no, you got out of there by 6. And another guy says, "No, it got dark and you finished up about 10. I said, "Bingo. It wasn't dark, but we finished at 10. 2 trees, 2 hours. I loaded them. We flushed the stump, and we were out of there." The man got $150 for each tree. I got $275 an hour, which was $5.50 was a lot of money back in those days. So this guy not only teach me how to work, there really was no pain.
Yeah. Well, so the foundation of your strength, like you say, came from living a very outdoor life as a child, from just putting the work in with this guy who was doing the tree work and stuff like that. And essentially you'd not really been in the weight room other than just playing your sports through school. Because that one experience you had, we were told to get the hell out straight away.
Yeah, we didn't lift weights when we were growing up. But pulling on these chainsaws, there was a 2-man with a 5-foot blade, almost, well, just under 5 foot, just under 2 meters. And it twisted sideways, so when we flush a stump, some of them were maybe a meter across. And as I'm pulling, I'm down low with my heels dug in like a deadlift pull. And I'm pulling and he's working the saw through the tree. And it's taking 10 and 15 minutes of pulling. Well, after I graduated high school and went to visit the University of Wisconsin in college, they started loading the bar for a deadlift. I'd never seen an Olympic bar before. And 135, 2 1/4, 315, 405, 495, 585. I did 600 pounds the first day I ever tried a deadlift. So when some of the fellows, that were training and we were exposed to and meet here and there, work for years to get to 650, I think, years? Okay.
Did it on day one.
How about days? Yeah. So, high school worked really good in sport. It taught me a lot of things. I wished when I talk to young people, try to tell them, I wished I would have studied more and been more into scholastics. But I wasn't, and that didn't work out. And often we say when one door closes, two doors open. Sports worked for me enough to get me to a big town and into the YMCAs and with some coaches that taught me how to power lift.
So college didn't work out for you. So when you were at college, was it you were dreaming of the NFL still at that point, or was it?
Not at all.
No.
I thought, this would be nice to go and follow the Larry Zonka as a fullback and to be a big, powerful footballer. But gosh, there were bell-bottom pants. I had a pair of shoes when I quit the football team. I walked back from the stadium. They had 6-inch heels, 2 inches in front. They were made out of suede. There were hippies in those late 60s, early 70s, and I was one of them. Into flower power, tune in, turn on, and drop out. So that was a whole movement intellectually and the psyche back in those years that I just didn't really fit the mold. And football sucked in college.
But like you say, you dropped out of college, but when one door closes, two more open, and this is when you found the YMCA, is that right?
Yeah, but the YMCA, Young Men's Christians Association, I was a bouncer in a strip joint, and I lived above another bar where I was the bartender. One night, that was my bar. One night a couple guys on their motorcycles, and they sat out in front of the pub, and I was sitting on the porch on the main street in Madison, and the guy takes his bike and he goes, "Woo-rah, woo-rah." I go, "Shut the fuck up." He flips me the bird. I take my bottle of TJ Swan and I tip it back and I throw it. It would have been probably easily 20 meters, maybe more. Hit it right in the tank. He's all mad. I go over to him and his bike. He won't get off his bike. So I shove him and his bike lands on top of him. Everybody in the bar where I'm the bouncer and the bartender, and that's my street. Kaz just fucked this guy up and everybody's cheering. And then the YMCA tried to teach me a different message. One where, if you really want to do something, you kind of have to develop goals and a mindset. They taught me 5 things while I was there, and it really changed my life. They told me how to squat, how to bench press, how to deadlift, how to add them together for the total. Well, I started to accelerate. Overnight, I bench pressed 400 pounds, and my squat went to 400 for 10s in a month or more. We were training hard and heavy, and it was that 5th thing that they taught me that really affected me in such a great way. It gave me hope and motivation that there was something greater, something bigger. It happened one day when the guys said, "Bill, put your hands together and put your head down. We're going to have to say a little prayer." I go, "Who are we going to talk to?" They said, "Mr. Big, the man himself, the Son of God." I said, "Okay, let's do that." And as I said a prayer, it was simple. "Lord, make me the best. When you do, I'll be humble. I'll share my talents with others. One day you can speak through me and I'll work for you." Okay. That day, the next couple of days, I walk out of the Y and I stop at the big book. It's wide open to Psalms. My eyes are attracted immediately to Psalm 40. It said, I waited patiently, O Lord, for you to hear my cries. You reached down and pulled me out of a miry pit. You put my feet onto a rock. You established my goings. You put a new song unto my heart, even praise unto the Lord. Many will see and will fear and will trust in the Lord. That moved me. And just a couple weeks later, I went off to do a workout. And it was the state championships, the state meet. I wasn't going to compete because I was going to the next level meet, a regional, a few weeks later. And the last man to squat did a 650, but he tried a 700 pound. Well, I stepped under it and did it for 5 reps. Now, if you look at Bill Kazmaier Facebook, there's one of my pictures. It's got me squatting that weight. I'm not that big. I probably could have done nearly 800 pounds. I just got started. But if you look above my head, you'll see a 4-inch, perfect ribbon of light, a half meter long. It's a ribbon above my head. That picture kind of spoke to me that, okay, I said, I promise I'll follow, help me, and I got some help in a hurry. Whether I stayed on that path and how much I stuck to it my whole life, I sure changed my life around and started to do very good in lifting, winning the regional championships, the national championships, the world championships, and the world's strongest man. And then having that opportunity to give it back and say, okay, speak through me. I went to 10 schools in one day, delivering a message of hope and inspiration. Another town invited me in and they said, Bill, what's the record? We want to do a few more. Can you stay a day and a half? I said, sure. We went to 15 schools and YMCAs, and I challenged kids. Shoot for the stars, soar with the eagles, hang out with the condors, and stay away from the chickens and the turkeys. Be the best you can be, every day in every way. And use the strongest words in your vocabulary. I can, I will, I can, I will, I can, I will. And you'll be empowered to do many great things. The final records were 18 and 32 hours, 27 stops in 3 days, challenging young people to conceive, believe, and achieve, to pick a goal, short-term or long, to develop a plan to get to that goal, to believe in the plan, believe in the goal, believe in themselves, and believe that maybe the higher power wanted them to do it. What's achievement? Desire, determination, dedication, consistency, and a little bit of hard work. But what's hard work? Something's only heavy if you think it is. It's only hard if you think it is. If you tell yourself you're good at something and you like it, you do. I'm sure, Stuart, that's how you got to the level that you did, by driving yourself and pushing yourself.
And I think having that belief in yourself and that positive self-talk is massively important because, like you said, if you're going to achieve it, you've got to first think about it first. It starts up here, and then you've got to believe that you can actually do it. And then, like you say, you've got to put that plan in action to get to where you want to be. So, it's a great message to be passing out to the kids. I mean, so like when you went to the YMCA and you kind of found your calling, you kind of found your path, would you say that was the first time that you really had almost like a mentor or somebody to follow? Because obviously you had the incident with Mr. Norse. You had your dad was obviously not a great role model for you to be around. Do you think that was what you were doing? You were looking for something to kind of follow and teach you the way to go?
Yeah, without a doubt, the YMCA starting here in England in 1847, that's a movement I wanted to be a part of, even as I snuck through the back door. My friend left a wedge in the door. After 3 or 4 days, the wedge was gone. Stuart, can you imagine the balls it took, the courage it took for me to walk through the front door with my head down, not knowing whether I'd be rejected or accepted? As I entered, the gentleman at the front desk grabbed a towel and flipped it to me and said, "Locker room's upstairs, Bill." Well, now this is the middle 70s, early 70s, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, the wet area, and the locker room, and 75-year-old men walking around naked. It was pretty much something I didn't want to be involved with. So I said, nah, here's your towel. I'm just going to use the gym. And yeah, it was the first family I think I ever felt. It was the first place where I went that I felt I was accepted. There might have even have been, when I look back, a couple of the guys that actually loved me like a brother. And as they taught me how to lift, there were some amazing guys there. Taekwondo black belts. One fellow, Bubba Morgan, he squatted 765 pounds, benched 565, and deadlifted 804 for the American record. His deltoids were like Jim Williams, 12 inches, big, huge. He looked like Fred Flintstone. Huge shoulders and these massive but proportionate legs. He could almost dunk a basketball. It was his favorite sport. But he'd still do 300-pound tricep press downs and was extremely impressive. And I learned a lot from him and a Bob Lowry, who was a 242-pound state champion. Now, these are my early days, and that meant a lot. I then found other guys in my later years of powerlifting that I gravitated towards, like a Marvin Phillips and a Terry McCormick and a Dave Shaw, people who were national world champions and record holders. So
when you walked in the Y, and like you say, you were gifted that membership to go in and train, and they took you under the wing and helped to mentor you and teach the ways of powerlifting and stuff like this. How long was it before you were actually competing in competitive powerlifting?
Just a few months after I started, I did a meet in Madison in town. And
what year was that your first comp?
75, 6, 5.
Yeah.
And I think like a 490 bench, 560, 70 squat, and 650 deadlift in the first meet. But then it was off to regional and national. And it was hard to tell whether I wanted to be a full super heavyweight or cut down. So I knew how to cut weight in high school, losing 37 pounds from 222 to 185 was really hard on my body. I'm surprised that I still have kidneys. Do you know what a Lasix is?
That's a diuretic.
A water pill.
Yeah.
In high school, I lived with a doctor's family because my mom moved out of the district, and I found the Lasix tablets in her cabinet. And I'm surprised that I still have kidneys with what we did. I was bulimic. I used those diuretics as well as X-Lax, and everybody thought Bill's eating good. Yeah. They didn't follow me to the locker room where I took a pencil down the throat after every lunch. So I think I was a professional athlete even in high school. It was a shame, and maybe it was a blessing. One of the guys I played with at Madison, Wisconsin, was named Mike Webster. Number 52, blonde, broad, just powerful. After the game, I went by the weight room. There he is, benching 405 for fives, squatting 500 for fives. An amazing athlete. When they moved me from fullback to a lineman, they had me do a kind of a semi-scrimmage against him for half a dozen plays. Now, realize that this guy, as a center in the line, his job was to pancake the nose guard, knock down the linebacker, and chase a D-back or corner every play. And that's what he did for years and years in the pros. He was considered, Hall of Fame, one of the best. I stood him up on the line, shed him, and made the tackle a few times in a row, right on the line of scrimmage. So I had potential. But I felt like somebody had hit me with a baseball bat. When I tried to play with Green Bay under Bart Starr, one of the D-backs was named Ronnie Lott. Ronnie Lott would go into a seminar situation in front of 500 people and put a helmet on the floor. And he'd take a baseball bat and stand up front and talk for a little while. And all of a sudden, he would bolt back to that helmet and whack it with a baseball bat, saying that's what like professional football is like every single play. So really the one door closing, two doors opening, I think it was a blessing because I'm already pretty ditzy from those days as being a fullback in high school, carrying the ball 10 times in a row. You might have said, well, Bill, why didn't you just go all the way down the field? Well, we did, but it took us 10 plays to do it, and I got the ball every time. And the helmets weren't very good back in the day, so that might have been just a few concussions in my career growing up.
So take us through a little bit of your training routine, because, like you say, was your training routine for powerlifting much different to your strongman training routine?
Yeah, I got to tell you like this. Powerlifting is power and strength and strongman. If you are a power lifter, you are a very strong man. In my days, we did a pyramid, which of course we did 10s and 15s, then 10s and 12s and 8s, then 10s and 5s, until we finally got to the top of that pyramid. 5 5s, 4 5s, 3 5s, 2 5s, that's about 4 weeks. 3 3s, 2 3s, a couple of doubles and go to the competition, knowing that off of a double in the squat and deadlift, I was probably a good 50 pounds, more than 20 kilos. And in the bench, maybe a little less than that, 35 pounds. So we used a calculator and backed everything off from our gym lifts and for powerlifting. That all transferred over to the strongman, where I really didn't need to practice the events. We didn't have the events to practice. So my powerlifting career fueled my strongman career, which was really short-lived. The first one I did was 79. With a few distractions, I was winning the competition. Probably could have, should have won it. The most wonderful event of my strongman career happened in 79 when I beat Don Reinhout in the deadlift. He's a world champion powerlifter. I went 900. It was hard. He went 900. It was hard. They called it 900. It was a car with weights loaded in the back. Who knows what it weighed? We're all strapped in. I went 960, and it almost busted my ass. He put his hand up and said, if he wants it that bad, he can have it. I quit. That's a pretty damn good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you come up to these shows, like how many times a week would you be in the gym?
8 days a week, 2-a-days, splits. Yeah.
Your philosophy was just more work. Because it's interesting, I had Andy Bolton on here before, and he's very much like, I trained 3 days a week. That was it. It was all about rest, recovery. But back in the day, you were more about just outwork everybody else.
Yeah, we didn't know what recovery was. We're eating 10,000 calories a day, sleeping as much as we can. On the heavy deadlift days, I did warm-ups of high bar squats, 300 kilos for 15s, high bar, narrow stance, before deadlifts, heavy. So could I have lifted more in the deadlift if I wouldn't have done those squats? Probably. Did I know how to peak out? Not really. Kind of on your own, going into uncharted territory. We just literally did all we could. And on heavy squat day, we did partial deadlifts from the knee, 100 over what we're doing off the floor. And that's like every 3 days, every third day. There was no seventh day rest. We just rolled right over. So was I scientific? Probably not. Was I a Cro-Magnon man and dragging my knuckles? Maybe not. I tried to be as cerebral as I could about lifting. To me, lifting weights was a manifestation of my frustration and my inability to use levitation. I quite often followed Uri Geller and tried to turn toothpicks or razor blades on water with my mind. I was into the paranormal and psychic senses, telekinesis, moving things, clairvoyance, precognition, telepathy, and was pretty frustrated that I couldn't master a lot of those and wanted to study them in college, but I had to have a degree in psychology to go into parapsychology, and that pretty much, I I think Pavlov's dog and rhesus monkeys and some of that stuff is a load of bullshit that you don't really need to know about to study some of those other things. So I just went off and on my own. And I think a lot of my power was derived from meditation, from using the motion picture of the mind. There have been a few doctors that have talked about that in the 90s. In those early and mid 70s, I was running that motion picture of the mind. I could see myself in the workout the night before. I would try to heighten every sense of awareness. Hear the sounds of the weights clanging, smell the locker room, feel the weights, see other people and myself doing the weight over and over with repetitions that were easy, so that the next day when I went into that environment, I'd already been there and done it hundreds of times. So the words we would use to encourage each other was, see it and do it. Because you've already done it. You've already seen it hundreds of times. You know you're going to do it, so see it and do it.
It's interesting. I think I've spoken to a lot of people over this table, and the guys that have got right to the top are very, very big on visualization. And like you said, obviously you're having the interest in all the Uri Geller stuff and that lot. That obviously trained your mind to really be able to strongly visualize everything that you wanted to do, and then you powered that into your lifting.
Yeah, and you would think in 2022 that people that are just discovering that now, it's kind of like, there's a lot of mental powers that have gone back thousands of years, and some different cultures had mastered those without a doubt. Take the Tibetans in the highlands, guys that stay in a meditative state, and they literally stop their heart, they levitate, they do all sorts of unusual things.
How much extra fitness and cardio and conditioning did you have to put in when it was time to do the strongman stuff?
You know, when you think about the fight or flight reflex, when you are a raging animal that's beat into a corner and you come out in a violent rage, that's one of the aspects that we tried to use to prepare for a competition. So if a competition is going to require a great deal of cardiovascular development, what are you going to do? I strapped weights around my waist or a vest, 20 kilos, grabbed 8 kilo dumbbells, put 3 kilo ankle weights on, and I had a pair of 1 kilo lace weights for my tennis shoes. And so I'm loaded for bear. And I'm in the Coliseum running the stairs. And I bang 5 reps, take my heart rate, 25 beats in 10 seconds. Not bad. I bang 5 more, 30. Bang 5 more, 35. The last set of 5, 41 beats in 10 seconds, 246. I'm not sure what kind of shape I was in, but we know that the measure really of your fitness level is how fast you come from your highest to a normal. And mine came back pretty fast. So making training as hard or harder than the competition was a mechanism that I tried to put into my training for strongman. We had one competition called the Ledefi Mark 10. It was 4 events. First being a partial squat, about 1.5 or 2 inches. Second one, a wheelbarrow weighing maybe 850 pounds in the hands for, I'd say 8 or 10 meters. Third one, a 56-pound block weight, standing on the back of a flatbed truck, throwing it into a sand pit in a Coliseum in front of thousands of people for distance. And the fourth one, I want to say a 200-pound sack, 50 meters in the hockey rink, down and back and down and back. Well, how would you train for that partial squat? And knowing that it's going to go up close to 2,000 pounds. I just got in the hack squat machine, put all the weight on it that I could, and did sets of 50 with as much weight as the rack would take. I thought that was a pretty good way to train for that, and I did well at the competition. In the wheelbarrow, it was just grip and go. We're always picking up 900 and more in a partial lift, so I did well in that event. In the block weight, I set the world record and for distance. And then in the sack race. Stuart, I ask people, how long do you think it would take me to carry a person nearly 100 kilos, 90 kilos, down 50 meters, turn around, come back, turn around, go down, turn around, come back? You know, I got to, it's a Canadian Championships, and I got to go and watch these athletes compete. And I was inspired by a Highland Games guy who was 38 years old going up against a 21-year-old Canadian champion. And that Canadian kid took this old guy and took him down the course. And when he turned the corner, he just pulled ahead of him. And he did that on the third rep, and on the fourth, he just ran away and beat the guy. And I thought, I went home and I built a sack. And I carried it up a ramp in my parking deck one time. I said, nah, I don't like it. It sucks. But I'll just do my other training in the gym, high reps, and get ready for this thing and just go and do it. Well, we get to the competition. It's the fourth of the 4 events. I did well in the other 3. And guess who I draw in my heat? The Canadian champion. So what did I do to bitch slap this little guy? I took him down on that first turn, and I went in hot, fast as I could go, out of control. Nobody can slow down, stop, turn around, and come back the other way at the speed I was going in. He tried it, couldn't do it. Ran away from him. Not really, just pushed him on the second rep. Same thing, came in hot, made him work hard. Down for the third one. This is where what I saw him do to the old guy, I did to him. Came in just as hot, planted a foot, took off, and ran away from him. 42 seconds.
Wow. Doesn't surprise me, mate, knowing what I know about you, so.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, like, did you prefer the static lifts or those running sort of events?
You know, a combination. Car flips were fun for me, sack races and all the rest. Of course, in Budapest, I had to make a point because they would, in some of the strongman shows, they would have me go against the weakest, the smallest guy, Laszlo Fekete. And this was after my prime of the early 80s. The late 80s, they brought me back just to kind of, have me in the show. And there were so many stitch-ups going on that if I'm running against Laszlo Fekete in a carrying event, I don't know how fast to go. It's different implements. And I remember in Budapest, our second event, I think was car turnover. Well, they chocked the far tire and on a hill, or the near tire. So it didn't roll until I lifted it up. Well, not only did the car roll, but so did my ankle. And some of those competitions were just really difficult to win and to gauge just how much effort to put forth. So one of them was the cart deadlift. And we had like 6 events. I only took 2 and then just went and sat down. Sat down like I was hurting. And everybody thought, well, he's probably out of the competition. I was sandbagging. What I did was take my second weight, which was more than anybody else could do. Then I took my third weight, and I just revved up like a freight train. And when I pulled that weight, I gave a 30-second dissertation speech on what strength is. It's not running and galloping about. It's 2 feet firmly planted. So, of course, I like the static lifts.
And what about your nutrition? Like, I know you said you had getting the 10,000 calories down and stuff like that. Did you, because you always looked in great shape. I'm looking at this picture here, you looked in fantastic shape. But, like, were you focused on certain qualities of foods, or was it just a case of just getting those calories in? And you were working so hard. And like you say, you were in the gym 8 days a week, twice a day. So,
Calories. We made some big glaring mistakes and didn't realize it. Maybe the fat was okay. We would use 70-30, 80-20 beef. And it was the white stuff. We just drained it. And we'd take a half a kilo of cheese and melt it on and drain that. I was a lot of fat. My cholesterol was 350. I don't know how you measure here, but 200 is the new norm of a high in America, and I was almost double that. So we were pumping a lot of fat through our bodies. You know, I often tried to find every advantage that I could to become the best I could be. Some people go to some real extremes to do that. There were two books that we looked at a lot as we were going through our career. One was a Bible. The other was a PDR. And one of the things we found in the PDR was a nasal decongestant called Periactin. That was a wonderful thing because your nose was always clear, sinuses. But it had two side effects, both quite devastating to your training and recovery. One side effect was sleep nearly 16 hours a day. That's a lot of growth hormone, sleeping that much and recovering. The other was a voracious appetite. In the middle of the night or after 8 hours of sleep, I would make a full blender drink, which probably had 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 calories, and I'd eat a half a chicken and eat throughout the day like an animal. So for a short period of time, I think under the right circumstances in a modern day environment like now, if I would have been able to reenact what I did back then and gotten to a body weight of maybe 370, 400, I would have been limited on some things like deadlift because the hand gets so fat you can't hold the bar, and I don't have a big hand. But if you can use straps like we can, I think I could have been pulling some pretty good-sized weights. You know, to bounce around and back to the strongest man competition, when the measure of a man is how you react on a bad day. Being ill-prepared and going balls to the wall. Guys like Jeff Capes, he was really smart on just where to put his energy and how hard to compete, and knowing what he and everyone else was most likely going to do. I, on the other hand, had to win everything. And in doing that, one year, in the squat, I think it would have been 81, I tore one adductor and at 870 pounds. So I wrapped it. What else would you do? And I went 950 and tore the other one. Now the next lift is deadlift. Well, the warm-up started at 300. I could barely move it, pounds. The last warm-up was 600, and it was excruciating. I just did a stiff leg and locked it out. The opening was 700, then 800, then 900. Now, this is no stimulants. This is no painkillers. 925, 950, 975, 1,000, 1,025, 1,050 with 2 torn hamstrings. There's a wonderful story I have about a man named Dave Brown. Dave Brown was a strongman lifter who came up to me 5 years after that competition and said, Bill, he was real sheepish and shy and kind of said, Bill, look me in the eye. I broke your record in the coin lift with 1,060. I said, oh yeah, Dave, here's a 22 caliber Derringer. Shoot yourself in this leg, take it, go heavier and shoot yourself in this leg, take it, and come back and go 1,060. And then, yes, at that point in time, you did beat my record.
Well, this is one of the things that I'm most excited to talk about is this elite mentality that you have, okay? And dealing with pain, like it just doesn't seem to bother you because obviously there's the story there when you tore your adductors and hamstrings and still went on to deadlift. I think you then, after that, went on to go wrestle as well. Was the 4 events left after that hamstring tear? Yeah. So you then had to go and wrestle 2 of the strongest guys, a couple of the strongest guys in the world at the time. I think Dave Waddington was the self-proclaimed strongest legs in the world at the time until you smashed his record. So
with Dave Waddington in that wrestling match, the events before I tore the pectoral, and there were 4 events. The very next one was squat. Yeah, and I did the record in the competition. I was full of myself and said that I was going to do 1,000 in a real competition because Dave's was in a home meet. But yeah, it was kind of tough back then, you know, to get into an event, win, and then know just what to say in an interview. oftentimes, as many don't know here in England, there are 2 different TV shows being made at the same time back then. One for Britain, for your Christmas Eve show, and one for America, which was shown much earlier. And it's obviously, when I beat Jeff Capes by 30.5 points, the British TV was able to make it look like it was a rivalry. Sheesh. I don't know how they did it, but those are the only ones you see nowadays in this time. So they didn't really tell the story of how I blew the pectoral off in the bar bend and still came back and took 2 firsts, a third, and I think in the wrestling I just did 1 match and took 6th or something.
Okay, so the bar bend is, for those that don't know, he's taking a steel bar and bending it over your head, right?
Yeah.
And this is where you blew your pec out.
Yeah, the year before the injury, I did a bar about 3/4 of an inch of hot rolled steel. I was the only one to close it. Much stronger than Capes. Under change of conditions, cold rolled steel, probably 3 times stronger, I made a mistake. I put a bunch of towels on my head, I pulled and pulled and pulled, and then said, fuck it, and went over the top and started to push. And when I went over the top on this side, I blew off the pectoral and deltoid.
And these were both in the World's Strongest Man finals.
Yeah.
Okay, you've blown your pec off 1 year, you've done both hamstrings the other year, you still go on to finish the events, and not just finish the events, but win the shows.
Yeah. With the pectoral blown off, I would still beat Capes by 30.5 points, and I did a tug of war against him for 9 minutes.
9 minutes?
Now, who was in shape? And guess what he did? Same thing as Bruce Wilhelm. He quit. Yeah. It's kind of fun to stare at somebody for 9 minutes and then watch them quit. They have to live with that the rest of their lives.
That pain must be excruciating that you were going through at the time.
No, I think.
Why doesn't it bother you? Like the normal man would have quit when you've got 2 torn hamstrings and a torn pec. You know.
Yeah.
Why don't you?
I saw a guy in Africa get a hangnail and go to the hospital and drop out of the competition a few years back. So some guys, measure of pain is, well, you take a guy like Darren Sadler. The guy's doing a Conan's wheel. He goes around and around, and it's clearly he's passed out on his feet, but he doesn't know how to quit. There's that kind of heart. And, well, he was raised on a farm, worked his ass off, not only smart, but just been told you're too small his whole life. Well, the pocket rocket went over, and it was I called him the giant killer in China. But so it's guys like that they don't feel pain. Imagine being stung by a bee or bitten by a mosquito, and you scratch it, and it hurts, but it hurts so good that I believe you could speak to this in length regarding medium weights for high repetitions, and you're in the zone, and you've got that pump, and you're just going and going and going. I saw Dorian Yates once run the rack in Birmingham, Chelmsley Wood at the Forum Gym. He was doing a bicep routine, and I think it was I'm not sure what other exercises he did, but this one captivated me the most. He started off on the rack, alternate dumbbell curls. It's super strict, and maybe, I want to say about 35-ish, then 40, put him down, 45, put him down, 50, put him down, 45, 40, 35, 30. He ran the rack. And somebody had written an article about that in Muscle and Fitness. But then also there were then retorts and other people that came in and made comments about that kind of training. Well, that guy was in the zone. And a couple of the comments, though, were, that doesn't work. I tried it. That's full of shit. Oh, yeah? Try it for like 3 or 4 years and develop that tool in your toolbox, that training methodology, and realize that you have to be that person in that mindset, in that body at that time to do those incredible things. And, I think that's why when you take Hafthor and Eddie, man, they both did unbelievable things for a couple of years and got out, which is so smart. There's a guy that I'm going to see at the Swiss conference at the end of the month in Columbus. His name is Donnie Thompson. Donnie Thompson had an incredible career in powerlifting and ended up with about a 3,000 pound total. He was given really great advice at that moment in congratulations and understanding that he's going to either live or die by Dr. Terry Todd, where we got together and said, look, you keep this up, you're going to be dead. And he cut his weight and he has a normal life. And although Eddie's going to compete now in a few weeks, end of November.
Back. Yeah. Is that for the England versus USA thing?
Yes. Yeah. Mr. Hangnail, Oberst, and Eddie Hall, Mr. 500.
My name's Colin Wiseman. I'm on week 11 of the Transformation Programme with Stuart Garrington. Been tough, but it's the good type of tough that when you realise all your mistakes for the previous year of eating too much and drinking too much.
I'd just say whatever your goals are, it gets you there. I set out with this as a 12-week programme, and like I say, I plateaued for 10 months, and within 3 weeks, I'd beat my expectations.
I've had to have surgery during the programme, but we've not changed anything. We've just changed the programming slightly. Been great all the way through it, so yeah, I'd recommend him 100%.
One of these things, I think, if you give it a chance and have a bit of self-discipline, I'm into the 5th week now and I literally feel the best I have done in years, to be honest.
So your the mindset that you like I say, it all comes down to mindset, right? You know, like without the right mindset, you're walking out and you're not competing with that blown out pec and the hamstrings and stuff like that. But you have a cast iron mindset. Like, where does that elite mindset to push through pain come from?
Well, you know, a number of different times in my life where I'm at a point that I'm in a fight or flight. I'm getting beaten with a club. And mentally I can go to that point where, you know, I can turn things around. And there's one power source that I tapped into that was pretty cool. And it wasn't rage. When I told you about the picture with the spiral of light above my head, I see 3 chairs as I'm about to go and do a big event. And I'm sitting in one of them. The other 2 are perfect white light and hell and fire and pain. And mentally, I'll see myself go sit in the chair of flames and feel what it's going to feel like to have the kind of weight I put on my back or the weights that I'm going to lift. It's excruciating. But I only stay there a short period of time. And I stand up and walk over into the light. Now, the light is purity. It's higher power. It's the highest energy that I can tap into. And then I get up and walk into myself and approach the bar. So I've left the pain behind. Although it's there, I've got that white light that's a hand on my shoulder, hand on my hips, takes me down on the squat and brings me right back up in something that I wasn't built to squat the weight that I did. I did a 900 triple in the gym, outside the rack with no spotters. My best squat was 930. The day I did the 900 triple, I had torn something in my hip. I went to the meet and did 925.30 on my second attempt. I was good for the 975. The world record was 968. On that day, I could have had squat record. I did the bench press record with a torn pec. 2 weeks before, in the gym, in the bench, I did a 633 triple. My coach said, "Bill, don't do a third one. You're going to hurt yourself." Thanks for that, motherfucker. And what happened on the third? Pow. I dropped down to a weight 575, did it for 5, said, my pec is fucked. What do I do? I don't know. Supposed to bench in 2 days, 3 days. What are you going to do? Well, I'll skip that. Okay, well, how about a week after the injury? What are you going to do? I don't know. I'll do 500 for 10. I did. And then, because after the 633 triple, I should have done a 655 or 60 double, which put me at about 690 or 700. Instead, with the pec strained, torn, I kept my elbows in really tight, didn't flare them like I normally did. My form was way off, and I did 661 or 300 kilos. People don't know that, I'm carrying these injuries and going around and still setting records and winning championships. And
that's just how far you were above everybody else at the time.
Yeah. I'll give you a little secret. It's purity of purpose. Now, when you think about this, if I was a sailing ship in the 1800s, and I'm bringing from Africa to the Americas frankincense and myrrh and gold and silver and spices, a wonderful yield of things that people need and want. And I'm doing it for the king or for my family. Your purity of purpose will put gale winds into your sails and plaster them against the mast. If you're selfless, you're doing it for others, family, country. If you do it in a selfish manner, your sails are slack. So I think having a reason to do something and a purpose and a goal, something that's deeper than yourself, more than the self, selfless.
And that helps you to drive on even through when you're feeling so much pain and when you're injured. I mean, how would you actually overcome the fear of lifting when injured? Because surely if you've got a torn pec and you've got to go bench press, that again, you've got to have a really strong mindset to not think too much about ripping the other one off or, damaging it even more.
Let's talk about the time I tore off my tricep. You see, people don't understand that when I came out of the world's strongest man, weighing 330 pounds, tearing the pectoral off. 49 days later, I went to the Green Bay Packers to play football. I lost 49 pounds and showed up on the football field. And the first day, we were doing a drill and I tore a hamstring. And played through that. A couple weeks later, jammed my thumb. And then went in a scrimmage and twisted my knee. I was in the ice tub up to my neck. And the guy said, "Bill, you don't make the club in the tub." I said, "No cut, baby." My chiropractor was unbelievable, Glenn Hammer. He put so many football players back on the field for Bart Starr that he said to Bart, "Hey, Bill needs a chance, should have a chance to play pro football. He's been kicked around and this and that." And Bart said, "Okay." It didn't hurt that in town there were 20 green trucks that had Kazmaier sanitation on the side. I was a local boy, or that was my uncle. And the problem is, I'm all beat up. I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. And think about the hunger factor at that time in Green Bay, not trying out. I have a contract. I also have a $25,000 Porsche that I just got. I also have $50,000 in the bank. Do I really need to be playing pro football? No.
Was it not a passion of yours? Was it not something that you really wanted to do?
Think of this. I showed up at practice, and the playbook on the offensive line was this thick. I went by the meeting room, and I saw the playbook for the defensive line was this thick. When you're beat up, doing two-a-days, you're tired, and you got to go to practice, you got to go play, and you got to be sharp, and you got to think all at the same time. That's really tough. And you're getting hit in the head every time. It's like, what's your name?
So you were much more passionate about the strength sports than you were the football. Yeah. I mean, one of the elite. We talk about the elite mindset you've got. Well, the most, I said I was researching and stuff. One of the first things that I found was this quote that you came out with. I think it was just like straight after winning the world's strongest man. You said, "Even though it was only 2 minutes ago, I've already forgotten about it." And was that the sort of mentality that you had? It's like on to the next. What's next?
We might call that spontaneity, where you don't really dwell on anything. There's two different types of meditation that I know of. One of them is mantra meditation, where you just maybe go, Om, Om. And another one where you let every single thought come through your mind, which might be airplanes, water, green grass, flowers, and food, and females, and frolic, and flights, and fights, and just every thought goes through. And that spontaneity of thought, you if you dwell on it, okay, brings a synapse. Some of my brain actually still works. I often talk about the white dove. And when I challenge young people to shoot for the stars and dare to dream, to soar with the eagles and hang out with the condors, and stay away from the chickens and the turkeys, to try to be the best they can be every day in every way. When you're up there with the condors and the eagles, there are doves. And the dove is so wonderful and beautiful. It's a lot like your pigeons. It's a world record. And if you're trying to achieve that world record and you're able to capture one, it's yours. It reminds me of a conversation that I had with Ted Arcidi. He had just done 666 in the bench press. He called me on the phone. I was off wrestling or something. He said, "Hey, Kazmaier, I just broke your fucking record." I go, I didn't know what to say. He took that dove and he held it so tight and it was all about him. He crushed it. It didn't go on from there. It's like if you take that dove, it lands in your hands. You've worked so hard to get there. You've climbed to the top of mountains. You've soared so high in the sky. And now it's yours, but you hold it for a nanosecond. You analyze it, critique it, enjoy it, and release it. Because guess what? A couple minutes later, you can get another one. So that spontaneous thought, I think, is really important, and not dwelling on something. And not, I've got a poster and have had half a dozen of those that have records and things. And when I talk about the lifts that I've done and the weights, it really is only something that's statistical at a certain period in time in our world that was the pinnacle, the top of the mountain. It's not my ego that says, I think I'm the world's greatest strongman. But case in point, I was 3 in a row and they stopped inviting me. I beat Capes, the best strongman England has ever had, by 30 points, more than 30 points, and was powerlifting world champion, world record holder at the time, and could have probably had all 4 world records. I wasn't far off of just taking the attempt on that squat with the torn fascia, though, at a 900 triple. I believe 975 was there. So, everybody has a moniker. And
absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, because that's something that I couldn't believe when I was researching you. You'd won the world's strongest man 80, 81, 82, 83. Surely you think you're going back to defend your title again. They just don't invite you. Now, the reason behind this was you were too dominant and they wanted to level the playing field a little bit, or what was the story behind that?
Yeah, maybe I was an asshole. A shit stirrer. I had a lot of fun psychologically with the athletes in the later years when I came back, because I was really pissed off. But especially because of the stitch-ups that they pulled and then not inviting me for that. I think one of the most solid, concrete reasons that they didn't invite me back was simply, as Barry Frank put it, it doesn't matter who you invite to the competition. We can invite any fat bastard and we'll end up with the world's strongest man, which is true. But when you're playing golf and Tiger Woods isn't there, or who is our tennis player that wasn't not allowed because of a COVID shot? He was going to be able to do a triple.
Federer.
Yeah. So to have Michael Jordan out of the NBA Finals in the basketball is like, it's a sacrilege. So it sort of shows what the sport was then. And, there are guys like Darren and Colin trying to change the sport now. They're virtually running World's Strongest Man as well as their giant shows. They're a very integral part and have done a lot to change the integrity and what World's Strongest Man is really all about and what it has been in its not so less lustrous past.
Well, that's one of the things we spoke to Darren about when he was in here, how much they've elevated the sport and moved it on. Like you say, with the new qualifying system and all this sort of stuff, it's not so much if your face fits, you'll get an invite. It's if you're the best, you'll be the best. Because they want the best people there to really find the world's strongest man. Yeah.
So to go back to the real reason I wasn't invited back, if you'll recall, in 1978, Franco Colombo fell with the refrigerator and broke his leg. Might have been 1977, I don't know. Long time ago. When he broke his leg, he laid there and said, "I'm a chiropractor. It's not broken." It folded over. Tibia and fibia, smack against the asphalt. He went on to court and he sued. He got in the neighborhood of $2.4 million. Arnold Schwarzenegger got on stage, and testified that he lost a lot of work, and he did. IMG, Trans World International. It was run out of New York, and after I won 3 times, the case was settled, and IMG England took the show back here. And I'll be damned if they needed the guy that beat Capes by 30 points back in the competition. They got this kid from Iceland, John Paul Sigmarsson, and John Paul's best squat was 800. I did 10 reps at 800. His best deadlift was 830. I did 2 sets of 5 at 8 1/4. His best bench was 480. I did 15 reps. My light day was 4 sets of 12 at 475. So who's stronger? And yeah.
So if you had been invited back, how many do you think you would have gone on and won? How many years would you think you would have dominated for?
If I would have even been shown the events, I stayed at Terry Todd's house, who was the commentator in 79. If he would have even told me to get ready for a barrel press, and I practiced it twice or 3 times, I was only 10 pounds out of winning first place in the barrel press. I could have easily won in 79, my first show. There was distraction at the end of the show that, imagine what could be a distraction for guys at the end of a show that took my attention off the last few events. And the next year they tried it again. They put a plexiglass squat platform above our heads with, I had a half a dozen Playboy bunnies sitting inches from my nose, and I never looked up. So I could have won in 79 and 80, 81, 82. Probably could have clipped 2 more. That would be 6, 7. I don't think that the 5 in a row by Pujanowski is all that impressive. Zydrunas Savickas wasn't there. There was IFSA. I was a diluted group of guys. Marius is really strong. Great endurance. What he did in this carry and drag one year was, before the guys got to the other end of the course, he had finished with the block weight. His stamina was just off the charts.
And he had a different look as well, didn't he? He had a different look to your traditional strongman. You know, like he could walk on a bodybuilding stage.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you can say this here. Why not? Magnus Samuelsson lived on a farm. He was a blacksmith. His wife was a blacksmith. Hard-working, tough guy. Marius Pujanowski lived above the pharmacy. He didn't dig potatoes. But, yeah, I think his dad was a powerlifter, so he started when he was really young and had, I'm sure, strong fundamentals. Yeah. But for static lifts, I wouldn't have been afraid to compete with him.
No. So, I mean, as we alluded to at the start of the conversation, when they do talk about the greatest of all time, you are always in that conversation. And with the modern day advantages of the science, the training, the nutrition, the supplements, the equipment, stuff like this, if you were at your prime today with all those advantages, where do you think you'd be ranking amongst the modern day guys?
Tough to tell. I'm not 6'6", 6'8", and 440 pounds. So that said, that's a pretty distinct disadvantage. I like to look at stumpy reins, the right events, and distances, and a favorable draw here and there. Stumpy Reigns is probably the strongest man in the world. to speak to guys like Stumpy Raines in his height, could have easily been the strongest man. Right events and distances and weights. Statically, he was phenomenal. Gary Taylor, very similarly. When I did the 5 McGloshin stones, I don't know what the time was. I was the first to do all 5 of those. They wouldn't let me use any tacky. They said they didn't have any. So instead, my second, let me get to the injury on that one. But Gary Taylor could have easily, he was the fastest in the world in the stones. 19 seconds, just blistered the course. What did they do? They put the barrels way over his head, and they put him in the sand. It was like him shooting a basketball on the first one to try to get it into the on top of the cylinder into the hole, and they stitched him up. So, speaking of stones, I'd like to go to the Highland Games and what happened in Scotland at the Muscle Power Classic in the late 80s. Now, given that I was wrestling in 86 and 87, I tore my tricep off. My doc sewed it back on. I said, Doc, I got a competition in 8 weeks I've decided to go to. It's called Muscle Power Classic. Can I go? He goes, yeah, you can take a 10-pound plate, do a French press, and start working your tricep. Well, after 1 week, I went in to see my doctor, and he was going to check me out. He said, Bill, where's your cast? I said, Doc, I can't. I'm using a TENS unit. I can't work my arm with a cast on it. He said, that's the general idea, Bill. It's supposed to heal for 8 weeks, and then you can use a 10-pound plate. Well, Muscle Power Classic, I'm throwing, lifting, carrying. We get to the stones on the first weekend. Well, I win the Muscle Power Classic. I beat everybody. I hadn't trained in 8 weeks. So how much stronger than them was I? That was Sigmarsson, Helty Arneson, Jamie Reeves, Jeff Capes, the whole group. So the following weekend, we did the stones again. And I noticed the weekend before that everybody went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I said, wait a minute. I went 1, 3, 5, 4, 2. They're all using tacky. I couldn't get any. I said, if you're going to get tired at 4, why don't you just do 1 and 3 as warm-ups, pop the 5, and come back for 4 and 2. And I did. And they said, Kazmaier went out of order. I said, you're out of order. I'm the world's strongest man. I make the rules. I rule the world. Sort of.
We were allowed to do that. We allowed to just, because I always assumed that you had to do it in the right order. Could you do that with a
ascending order?
Doesn't matter.
There was no rule. There was a like Stumpy's rule. No rule that you couldn't hold on to a little duct tape ring because your arms weren't long enough.
So like you said, you won 79. You've won the powerlifting world champion. You went on to win 3 world's strongest man titles. Not invited back. You went back to win another powerlifting title. You tried out at American football. You then found pro wrestling. Okay, so this is interesting to me because were you a fan of pro wrestling at the time, or how did that kind of come about?
Well, I was always a guy that if something happened, I just switched gears. When I tore the tricep off, I went right back into strongman. 2 months later, I tried football right before that, and when the pectoral tore off, I just went right into football. So when I went into wrestling, for one reason or another, a friend of mine was in Calgary, Alberta, and I said, I'm coming up. And so I started wrestling.
So that's when you started wrestling for Stampede?
Yes.
And that's Stu Hart's?
Yeah. Can I give you a nice story about Stu Hart?
Absolutely.
Oh, that old bastard. We were having dinner with about 20 people. Bret Hart, Stu Hart, Owen Hart, Jim Neidhart, all the Harts, and all the wives and girlfriends, and about 20 people up on the hill in the big house. And we get done with dinner, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's been a really nice, pleasant evening, And Stu says, Kazmaier, you big bastard. Come in here. I want to show you a few things. So I go, okay. He closes these 2 sliding doors. We're in on the carpet, and we start to grapple. Everybody from dinner went out on the porch and looked through this huge window and watched a 70-plus-year-old guy take this young beefcake and stretch the shit out of me. He hurt me every which way but break me. welcome to Stampede Wrestling and Stu Hart.
Yeah, I mean, I heard some brutal stories of training sessions in the dungeon. Did he train you to become a pro wrestler, or were you trained elsewhere?
He did not. A couple of the guys in the Coliseum had a ring set up. Think about training. I would do heavy bodybuilding, power bodybuilding in the morning, wrestle at noon, come back in the afternoon for a shit ton of abdominals, a little bit of cardio. I mean, we're talking baby decline abdominal sit-ups with a 100-pound plate, 15 right, 15 left, 15 center, laying back on a horizontal hyperextension, doing twists with up to a 100-pound barbell behind my neck, really trying to get carved in the middle, and then driving off 2 or 3 hours that night to wrestle. So that's heavy training in the morning, in the ring at noon, another workout mid-afternoon, and then drive off and wrestle at night. The day I tore my tricep off, I wrestled 2 more days. Wow. And then had it put back on. But Calgary, I never made it into the dungeon. They didn't want me to call myself the world's strongest man. They had belts. I didn't have a belt. They didn't want anybody to be confused that I might be some sort of a champion from Mars or something like that.
So how long did it take you to kind of get to the required standard? Because obviously, pro wrestling is very different from amateur wrestling. You've got to tell that story. You've got to sell your opponent's moves. I mean, just taking bumps alone, that's tough on the body.
They let me beat a couple guys like Oz at WCW. And Vince and his group wanted me to come up to New York. I was invited once or twice, but I would have had to be a heel. And as you know, the face is the guy who gets beat up a couple times, comes back, and then they go into the finish. It's like a roller coaster. I wasn't really good enough to lead a match. So staying as a face, my story ended at WCW when Jim Herd was replaced with Dusty Rhodes. And I called Jim and he said, Bill, we got a contract for you. We're going to give you $235,000 for 125 days. I said, okay. He said, come in, call me on Monday and come on in on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll have your contract ready for you. Okay. I had just gotten back from Japan and maybe got over there and was really looking forward to a solid career in wrestling. And I get on the phone and they said, well, Jim Herd was fired yesterday. Dusty Rhodes is, the pusher, the booker. So I call him up and I say, Dusty, all I need is another 100 matches. I'm going to have this shit figured out. He goes, hey, Kazmaier, my son Dustin, he needs 100 matches, more than you do. So fuck off. That was the end of my wrestling career.
Wow. So when you you had that all-American strongman, I say gimmick, it wasn't a straight gimmick, it's you. But how did you find cutting the promos and stuff like that? Did you do much of that? Because obviously you're very charismatic as a strongman, but certainly having a mic in your hand and it being scripted, did you find that quite nerve-wracking?
It was just kind of like tough guy and rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
A lot of growling and, I'm going to kick his ass and whatever and blah, blah, and your finish move and favorite move. And they picked the music. And, when I almost got into wrestling when Over the Top happened with Sylvester Stallone and the Hulk Hogan.
I was going to say, did you ever fancy going down the acting route? Because it's a similar sort of skill set, right?
Yeah, well, for that same movie, they were going to wrestle, right? And the arm wrestling and the rest. But I went to a meet with, imagine, Columbus, Ohio, when I lived in Auburn, with Ken Patera, 500 pounds overhead press, did the world's strongest man. And he was booked and, pushed as the world's strongest man. He said, Bill, some night I make $100. Other nights I make $225. It ain't worth a shit. Well, when Over the Top came out, Hulk Hogan hit the charts and made millions. And I probably should have gotten in then, no matter what Patera had said. But like we say, one door closes, two doors open. I tear off a tricep or pull something or tear off a pec. I just go to another sport, try to find something else I can do. By the way, just this weekend I went to the boot store and picked up a set of darts. Watch out.
That's next.
Watch out.
We'll see you at the hockey. So when you're on there, like how did you find life on the road? How long were you actually wrestling for?
Yeah.
Because I see it's different stories, documentaries on it. And
150 years, so many, maybe not even 200. But here's your mentality and mindset in wrestling that I guess puts it over the way I see it. I pull into town. We got up early, got on a plane, got into town, got something to eat. We're headed to the gym. Rob Ricksteiner and his brother Scotty, the gym's closed. Fuck. We get back to the hotel. We don't know what to do with ourselves. We start fighting. He's got a ashtray and I got a phone, and we're whacking the shit out of each other. And the match is a couple hours later. Well, the ashtray breaks, slashes my hand wide open. That night I have to bear hug Abdullah the Butcher, who weighs 500 pounds. My hand's bleeding and needed stitches. And that night we go to sleep, get up the next morning, and I grab the phone. And it's like 6 a.m. I go, my alarm went off. I go, what time is it? The operator tells me in the front desk. I go, what day is it? She tells me, and I go, what town is it? It's like a freaking rat race. And it's really a tough life. I didn't know him very well, but Chris Benoit and Owen Hart and that group, Bret Hart had left for the WWF when I got into Calgary. But, there were some pretty serious guys.
Well, there were some big names in WCW when you were there. I mean, like you had your Arn Anderson, Mick Foley, Lex Luger. Like you say, you teamed with Rick Steiner.
Yeah.
And obviously, like you say, Scott Steiner. Was Scott Steiner in the WCW as well at the time?
Was he what?
Was he in WCW at the time? Yeah, I mean, he was jacked.
Okay.
So,
here's a back room story. Fucking Van Halen. Guy with a guitar, they're pushing him a little bit. I got a chair, my shit's in it. I sit down, he comes up and says, that's my chair. I did a football push on him and knocked him about 8 or 10 feet.
This is Scott Steiner?
No, this is this Van Halen guy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so we're on this little tour, and next night, Scotty and Rick decide they're going to use me as a ping pong ball. And one chokes me out, the next one spins me around, flips me to his brother. For 20 minutes, they beat the shit out of me in the back room, in the locker room. And now I've got a Broadway with Lex Luger. And I get in and I'm going, fuck, 20 minutes. He goes, settle down, get your breath, listen, I'll carry you. We did a fairly decent match. But so there were some good guys in wrestling.
How were you received in the locker room?
Well, it was shit. It was hell. Imagine you're kicking around the first few matches going on. You're in one of the later matches or maybe the main event. And so you go to change your clothes and your lock doesn't work. You fucking try it 10 times, it still doesn't work. And then you realize somebody had taken a bolt cutter and cut your lock off and put a different one on it. So finally now it's like 5 minutes right before the match. They let you in your locker. Everybody's laughing, everybody's winding you up. You open the door, you go to grab your stuff, you get your singlet on, and your boots are gone. You go, where the fuck are my boots? And you look up in the rafters and there they're hanging, 10 feet up in the air. Everybody's laughing. Somebody tried to figure out who it is that did it. I'm in his face. Next thing you know, somebody kneels down behind me. He pushes me. I fall over backwards. Another guy pushes him out of the way. Goes to help me up. Goes to grab his hand. He's got Vaseline on his hand. I fall back down. They're just sitting there ribbing. On the way back, they're flicking peanuts in the back of your head and just winding you up.
So is it?
It was fucking hell.
Hell. A sport that you were glad to be out of in the end.
Yeah, one door closes, two doors open. I'm so glad that I didn't make it.
Yeah.
At that time, my gym was doing about $500,000 a year. My wife was running it. Bless her heart. I'm running all around the world, going off to Africa. I went to a promo in South Africa, and we did these big openings and strength feats, and some of the natives were lifting engine blocks with their teeth. And I went up to one of the engine blocks, and I took my baby finger in the chain, and I held it at arm's length. My friends slapped me and said, if they see you do that, disrespecting the king, they will kill you. Oh, I didn't know. He took me into the Rand refinery where they make all the gold. I walk down the hall, and it's quite a ways from the entrance. I go into this room, it's a big room. It's like a warehouse. 50 pallets going that way, 50 pallets going that way, all full. About a metric ton of gold on each pallet. For 50 years, they said, if you can pick up this brick, 35 kilos, you can have it. And it was tilted slightly inward about that long, 35 kilos. I'm feeling pretty good with that grip, you know. And, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we get to the brick. They rolled out the red carpet. They take one look at me and said, Bill, no matter what we said for 50 years, if you pick up that brick, you're not taking it out of here. So.
Did you pick up the brick?
I tried. And then that moment I was going to reach for the super glue in my back pocket, and they told me I couldn't have it. I said, fuck it, I won't be able to let go of it. I'll have to tear my skin off. So I took 6 bricks and stacked them up, 180 kilos. Not only has no one ever curled 315 for 15 reps, nobody's ever lifted 180 kilos of gold, because the guys that work in the factory production area are only picking up one block at a time.
Yeah.
So I've got some world records that nobody else is ever going to be able to get.
Absolutely.
The one I'm probably most proud of, I'm here in England since late 70s. Worked out a lot in Chelmsley Wood at Forum Gym. Chris Lawton. Jamie would come down from Sheffield. And we did some pretty crazy training in there. And I had a lot of good times. But traveling all over the world and being here, somebody offered to make me a set of dumbbells from 10 to 100 by 10 out of about 9-inch solid steel, and I think really high quality. They not only milled them, they put my name in it, Kaz Fitness, and made really nice handles with a sleeve that was oversized but turned. Couldn't pinch your fingers. They were perfect. Some they welded together, some they left in pieces. In 3 trips from UK back to the United States, I carried a full set, some 800, 900 pounds of dumbbells in my suitcase, in my backpack, and in my hands. And had 100,000 at the end of 3 months. That's a record that I don't think anybody can beat. Absolutely. Not from those early 80s.
So you put your body through a lot of your career with the football, the powerlifting, the strongman, the wrestling. When did you know to call it a day on everything? Well, it kind of came about when those late 80s, looking back, I did 24 comps and 30 seminars in 12 weeks. I was selling more T-shirts and posters and doing speaking engagements and doing great. My back was so screwed up, I said to O.D. Wilson, 1990, I said, O.D., I'm going home. I got money. I'm beat up. I know what they're going to do when we get over to Finland. I don't want any part of it. You go, but watch your back. Well, I watch his back. Numisto from Finland built a boat lift. OD didn't fit in that boat lift. It was modeled after a hack type movement from Ledefi Mark 10, where OD did nearly a ton. Well, OD got beat in that back lift and hurt something in his body, and then got stitched up in the brick race at the end. He's winning by 7 points. He's the strongest man in the world.
No doubt about it. Bingo, let's change the events up and make sure he loses. A few weeks, months later, he does an interview, gets all excited, and drops over dead with a heart attack. So one of the strongest, if not strongest, to ever compete and not win.
Lots of politics in
O.D.
that
Wilson.
sport at the time.
Yeah, I think there's politics all throughout the world all the time. But like we said, without a doubt, Darren Sadler, the integrity of the man, the family. He's been a businessman since he was a teenager. You know, I think, and Colin too, fantastic genius. I think that everything Darren touches turns to gold. And when he joined forces with Colin Bryce, you got a winning combination of intelligence and talent. And Colin can do just about anything, from voiceover to cutting film to the events. And with he and Darren together, it's a knockout punch. I wouldn't even dream of going up into Scotland to do over to any other part of Europe to do any one of the other strongman events, just because I know the integrity of these two guys. Yeah. They go over and above, and they do what they say what they do. They treat the athletes like kings. It's just amazing what they've done.
Yeah. Well, let's speak about life now. I mean, obviously you're still very much involved in Giants Live, and you're over in the UK at the moment. How long do you stay in the UK for?
There's a couple different ways of doing it. It's to fly back and forth, and then to be lucky enough to be around the competition and be involved and see all the athletes competing at this level in this day and age. To stay in Europe is fun, and I've booked in a few seminars to go in and help the lads in the gyms, which is a lot of fun for me also. But then the other side of that coin is that there's so many other places to be. I could be in Greece right now, or Asia, or back in Hawaii. So I'll stick around. I'm going, like I say, off to Ohio for that Swiss conference and Elite Fits, which is going to be an amazing event end of this month. I think it's off to Hawaii for the month of December, and then maybe over to the Philippines before I come back here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Great schedule.
So, like you said, and as well as doing the Giants Live stuff now, as we touched on before, motivational speaking in schools, and just motivational speaking in general. I mean, I want to give a little story. I was doing this research on you, and for the last couple of weeks since you agreed to come on the podcast, I've been listening to other podcasts and reading up on you and all this sort of stuff. And I was doing the 3 Peaks challenge. Okay, so that's 26 miles up and down 3 mountains in Yorkshire, all in one day. And I got 2 of them done, and I was absolutely fucked. I really wanted to go home, but I'd been listening to your stuff all the time, and the 3 words that I can, I will. I just started saying that in my head, and it's an instant mindset shift. In the fact that you can do something again, it starts in the mind, and it transformed into completing it very slowly, but we did it and we completed it. When the option, if I hadn't been giving myself that positive self-talk, would have been very easy to just go jump in the car and go home, So
isn't it empowering? It's a bit like an adrenaline, an endorphin cocktail.
It was just instant. It was instant. You start repeating them words. I can, I will, I can, I will. And
I'll share another one.
It changes your physiology.
I'll share another one if you would like.
Absolutely.
And I talk in parables often, and this is red light, green light, I'm gonna have an opportunity to speak with the UK Air Force and military in the weeks to come. And I'm really excited about it because I'm going to share one of these with them. Imagine being in any branch, special forces and the rest, Delta, and you got a team. When you start off the school, it's maybe 100 guys. You end up 10 or 15 graduating. The dropout rates are just incredible. But red light, green light really would help a lot of athletes on all levels. And it's simply this. You feel that lactic acid in your body and things start to tighten up and you're winded and guys are dropping like flies and you're running up that mountain and you think you're right at that point. Everybody around you is pushing that red button. Red light comes on, hit the red button, they quit, They're programmed. Feel that much pain, feel enough pain, you're done. This is the origination, I guess, of that winning mindset. You rewire your switches. So now your computer is reprogrammed. Your red switch is your green light, and your green switch is your red light. So when everybody else is hitting red switch and hitting red and enacting the red light, when you hit your red switch, your green light goes on, and now you go.
So you've been speaking in schools for how long have you been doing that now?
Oh, the seminar started back in the early 80s, and I flourished, I want to say, 90s and 2000, 2010, for about 20 years there. I would join companies that were, one of them like Star Trek, $350 million a year. They would pay me good money, and Metrics and a few of the companies that size, Strive and whatnot, we kind of had a mission statement. It was, let's go into a community and leave it better than we found it. I'd find myself at a prayer breakfast at 7 in the morning, a before school meeting with kids at 8, a radio station, drive to work, all the way through the day, different levels of age, and then a banquet or something in the evening. So it wasn't hard to get that many visits, knowing that that's your purity of purpose, is to go and help others, and maybe I'd often find one kid in a crowd with a disability or some sort of dysfunction. And I'd roll up frying pans and take the pieces of styrofoam that are in between the frying pan and really dramatically say, and try to bend the styrofoam and say, the strongest material known to man, styrus steel. It'll live 1,000 years and be here long after us. I can't even bend it. Who in the group is ready and willing to step forward, to be out of the ordinary, to challenge the world's strongest man, to be their very best? Arms would go up. The teaching moment is appropriate right there. Freeze frame. What have you just committed to? Your hands up in the air. You're ready and willing to come forward and challenge the best. In order to be the best, you got to beat the best. If you can apply this to all other aspects of life, step forward. And I take this young kid. And of course, he takes the styrofoam. I say, ready, set, go. I'm going to roll this frying pan faster than you're going to break this styrus steel. And I'm winking, strongest material in the universe. Ready, set, go. And I start to roll, and he's already snapped it, and I go, isn't this incredible? Your new nickname is now Mr. Incredible. If ordinary people can do extraordinary things, the gifted can do the impossible. And by going through that process of raising your hand, stepping out of the group, coming forward and challenging yourself and doing your best every day on a daily basis, you too can be incredible and do the impossible. So little skits like that.
Absolutely. It's amazing the impact that you're making. But what would you say you're most proud of? The impact you've had on the sport as strongman, or the impact you've had on speaking to kids in school?
Oh, I don't know. I think of the 100,000 people that follow me on Instagram, a lot of them, I think, were in a school at a time when I came in at a YMCA, and they said, Bill, you know those words that you used to motivate us and inspire us? You told us every day when we got up to say thank you for this day. I vow to make this day the best day of my life. As a matter of fact, every day in every way, I want to become better and better. I use that mantra every day, and this is what I do now, and you changed my life. So I don't think I've really changed many people's lives as far as lifting. Some people say, yeah, you're my favorite, and I started lifting because of you, but then you see them on another forum or part of social saying the same thing to another athlete to get a response, to get more likes and hits. And so I don't know. I'm no Superman.
You get a lot of them sort of messages of gratitude from people that you spoke to over the years.
Do. And those are kind of meaningful, where people finally filter through something that I hadn't opened in a year or two. And I go back to 200 or 300 people and tell them, wow, thank you. I've read yours and a few others today, and it really has made my day. It's picked up my spirits, because I think one of the things that people don't understand as we go through our lives as athletes and human beings, we have highs and lows. It doesn't matter how strong you are, you still can have all sorts of problems. And a lot of people, are hiding those problems, and they're not being honest, and they could use help. And so I've often done some things to encourage people to get out there and see a psychologist if they need to go to a place to get evaluated and to get help if they have to. And to, because you're not always going to have that super high day. And I believe manic depression, your high highs and low lows.
100%, mate, 100%, mate. It sounds like you're doing great work. I mean, what else have you got going on right now? You're still training now?
I train for my heart. I train to maintain muscle mass. I want to live longer, healthier, and happier. We just lost one of the greats, one of my friends, mentors, and probably best bodybuilder contributor in history, Bill Pearl. And Bill told me one time, years and years ago, that Kaz, sometime there's going to be a time where you don't have to take your shirt off, and you don't have to be ashamed of what your body looks like. It's because it's going to fall apart. And a Bill Pearl story. I saw him around 2000. I was near Bend, Oregon, and he picked me up from a convention and took me to his gym. I said, I'm going to bury this guy. I'm in my 50s, and he's in his late 60s or more. And we did set after set. And of course, he didn't use the same weight. I went as fast as I wanted to and could, normal pace, and I'm smoking. And he's just sticking right with me. And, the things he did were truly phenomenal. So what is your impact, and what it really is your legacy when you leave? For me to be able to be around the guys and, put them on a pedestal. Back in our day, the commentators for World's Strongest Man said, I heard a couple of them walk away, go, knuckle dragging idiots, just belittling us. So continually over the 20 years and more that I did work for the World's Strongest Man, I tried to make the athletes look as good as I could.
And it was only a couple of years ago you were still being an athlete. At 65 years old, you came back to have a little competition with Magnus Magnuson at the Giants Live.
I got way too worked up, and Colin was kind of wanting it to be hyped, and I hyped and went and had heart surgery 2 weeks after.
Wow.
Where I was in no condition to get into that hype, and pain shot down my arm, through my shoulder, in my chest, and I went, oh shit, is this the big one? Well,
do you think that competitive nature's ever going to leave you?
I don't know. Phil Pfister says something that it happens only once in a while on the road. He said, under that thin skin and warm and fuzzy personality, there's a raging freaking animal. And when somebody cuts me off on a roundabout or something,
Well, I'm going to finish off with a couple of questions, mate. I've taken up a lot of your time, and I appreciate you sticking around for this, mate. Biggest lesson that you can take from training and competing and put into everyday life?
Never quit. The will to win, to be the best, to be serving of others rather than yourself, to be selfless. Works all the way through.
Fantastic, yeah. And if you could go back to day one and do it all again, what would you do differently?
A lot of things. So the one that stands out would be I would specialize on something for a short period of time to excel, rather than being a decathlete and trying to do everything at the highest level all the time. That was, I did myself a disservice as far as records. Because, for instance, the 400-pound curl that I did could have easily been 500 pounds. I wasn't hardly training at the time, and a guy bet me that he could do behind the neck presses with his body weight more times than I could do curls with mine. Out of shape at 315, I did 15 reps at body weight. So if I would have specialized in some things, I think that would have been, it would have been a bigger legend probably.
A lot of them do that now, don't they? They specialise on just deadlift or just bench and stuff like this. Yeah. Well, look, we're going to leave it there, mate. I really, really appreciate you coming down and having that chat to me. unbelievable to have this conversation with a genuine living legend. So massively appreciate that, mate. Thank you so much.
And you know, as I was asked by one of the guys to leave a message on his phone, and he said, you know, I'm going to play this for months, and he used it. I said, "This is the answering service of my friend. I'm Bill Kazmaier, the world's strongest man. Leave a short, concise message. And above all, remember, keep it short." And as I said to you earlier, we're going to have a bit of a short podcast.
Podcast we've got.
Thanks for your time.
Now. Thanks so much, mate. Cheers, pal. Thank you.
My best to all your followers, and thank you for all that you're doing to make this world a better place. You're a good man.
Yeah, appreciate that, Bill. Thank you so much, mate. Cheers, pal.
Thanks so much for listening. Please remember to like, share and subscribe. And if you need any more information on the Transformation Programme, just hit the link below.